Hi guys, my name is Hayley. I am also on Gadigal country today, slightly different place, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who may be here today. So we're looking at waste in Bayside. So I'm from Keep Australia Beautiful. We do a lot of work with Bayside in education in primary schools. If you've had kids doing environmentals, that's us. You guys also won Not Tidy Town Sustainable Cities Award with us as well. So you're doing some great things, and we just want to run through waste and recycling services in Bayside. So you're probably familiar with bins. You might have the red bin, yellow bin, and green bin. You may not have a green bin. It depends where you live. And the reason we have these different bins, I'll just start off with the waste hierarchy, the waste hierarchy is sort of levels of what we should be doing with our waste from best down to worst. So avoiding waste is, choosing to buy, things like apples for snacks instead of muesli bars or something like that, so you don't have all those little plastic packaging. It's choosing to, when you go to the supermarket, don't put all your fruit and veggies in plastic bags. You can use your own. Reusing waste is something like, if you have a glass jar, you had peanut butter in it, you wash it out and you reuse it for other things. Recycling is lower than that, because that same glass jar, for example, to be recycled, has to go through a whole process. It has to go through in your bin, it has to be sorted out. It then has to be crushed down and melted and transformed with thousands of other glass jars and things like that, into new objects. So there's a lot of energy involved in recycling. Recovering energy, we don't really do in domestic services. Okay, so that's, old batteries and things, or recovering energy to be used as new energy sources. It's more industrial than domestic. Treating waste is treating chemical and waste that can't be used again. And disposing of waste down the very bottom, that's landfill. So that's your red bin, just disposing of it. Now, a landfill, a lot of people have this idea of a landfill like they used to be dumps. Okay, they're not dumps. It's not this great big mound full of garbage. It's not an open face full of garbage. There aren't like lots of, birds and rats and things swarming around. It's very well managed. I beg your pardon. So a landfill, this is not the Woodlawn landfill, but this is a really good example of landfills that we use in Australia. We call them sanitary landfills most of the time. So they are really well constructed, engineered pieces of land. That hole in the ground, they have to assess the site. Is it too close to waterways? Is the the different clay levels and things underneath the ground, are they any good? Is this a good site for that to happen? Is the groundwater level too high for the landfill to be here? And then, they do dig a great big hole, and they do line it with a few different linings. Usually there's a synthetic liner and some clay lining as well. And they're huge. They are really huge. I don't know if you can see the little trucks in there. They're really big areas of land. Okay, a lot of people have this idea as well that you can just sort of put your organic scraps in there and they're going to rot anyway, right? It's not like that. So a landfill is not a compost, because you're burying these things underneath the ground. They're being covered every single day. They're decomposing in what we call an anaerobic environment, right? So you might have heard the word aerobic with air. Anaerobic is the opposite. And because they're rotting in this anaerobic environment, they're producing methane. And this is why landfills are one of the greatest sources of methane. Not like for the land that they're on, I should say. Now, we can capture some of that methane and use it to generate electricity. If they can't do that, sometimes they do burn the methane to split it into CO2 and I think H2O. Still greenhouse gases, but methane is about 20 times worse than CO2. So we really don't want it there. When you're composting things and things in your green bin, for example, if we compost and mulch those, they're treated very differently. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. They are composted with air, they're chopped up. We use lovely microbes to get in there and decompose it in a more natural way. Unfortunately, Australia is really dependent on landfills. We are only not too recently, but it's still, we're not quite as good as some European countries, for example, better than others. But we still have this huge reliance on landfill just for getting rid of our waste. And most waste that isn't recycled by the consumer, that's us, ends up in landfill. This is another way of looking at our landfill, just so you have a better idea. I'll leave this up just for a minute for you to have a look at. You have to be aware as well, I live under a flight path. You might be able to hear that aeroplane. If you've ever left garbage, in the bin for a while and you lifted it out and there's all of that, liquidy, gooey stuff in there, that happens in a landfill as well on a much, much larger scale. It can also include sort of nasty chemicals too. And we call that leachate. And that does need to be pumped up. So there'll be a pumping system, the leachate collection sump, and we'll bring that up to treat that. Now, things like batteries, people put their little batteries into their red bin. That's a big no-no. So your batteries, any sort of battery, doesn't go in any of the bins at home. You need to take that away to, like, Aldi's have their battery collection, and Bayside City Council has various collection points as well. A general rule, wherever you are, is local libraries, town halls, council centres. And we do that because we don't want, we can recycle and recover a bit of energy from those. And B, we don't want the chemicals in the landfill leaching down and potentially getting into our land. All right, we talked a bit about the methane production. So these are the methane sort of capture pumps here. That's my dog. Oh, there you go. I underestimated it. Methane is 28 to 36 times more effective than CO2 at trapping heat. And as I said, we can capture some of that and create energy, but we also do burn a lot of it just to split it off. And that is, as I said before, from those things rotting underneath the ground or that organic material in an anaerobic environment. I got really excited, didn't I? I explained all of this in the last couple of pictures. All right. Now, the leachate, as we do pump it out, we do have to remember that landfills, while we're pretty good at them in Australia, we're pretty good at sealing that off. We don't want those sort of accidents to happen. These sorts of things can get into the local land and water. It doesn't happen very often in Australia. But of course, you have to remember that this leachate just doesn't go away. We can pump it up and treat it, but we still have to store it somewhere if it's poisonous. All right, now, most household waste, and this says preschool and childcare, same with schools, that we produce, looking at the graph from 2016 to 2019, not much difference. It's organic. So if you go to the EPA website, you can see waste by industry or by area. You can see what sorts of waste types we produce. Plastics is always very small because it's generally, as you can see on the side, it's measured in weights, and plastics are much lighter than anything else. When we do a waste audit at a school, we always count the pieces of plastic with the school. So a waste audit is when we tip out all the bins and we see what's inside. We always count the plastics and the fruits and vegetables, the organics, to compare, because it's very deceiving to see that we don't have that much plastic by weight. But when you go and count all of these pieces of plastics, you'll see that we have many individual pieces going to landfill, and it is by item a lot bigger than by weight. Paper and cardboard, while we can recycle a lot of that, a lot of it does end up in landfill as well, unfortunately. All right, so our main goal in waste in Keep Australia Beautiful for councils is diverting waste away from landfill. So you probably heard the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. That's a simplified version of the waste hierarchy. And this has a great, I should have mentioned as well, economic impact. Landfill is really expensive. All right, so your red bin, your garbage bin. Now, you can put organic material like orange eggshells and things like that in there. A better option, I beg your pardon, is to use a worm farm or a compost if you can. There are also apps out there like Compost Revolution and things like that, where you can actually sort of search people who will take organic waste for their compost, or you could be someone who will take other people's organic waste for your compost. It's a really good way of sharing there. Also, so many resources on the Love Food Hate Waste website. So that's New South Wales government website, to reduce the organic matter going to landfill if you just can't compost or use a worm farm. Now, your broken plates can go in there. If you have a rat problem and you find a dead rat outside, that can go in the red bin too. The plastic bags, this is the only bin you can put plastic bags in. Nappies, sanitary products, broken plates. Light globes don't go in the yellow recycling bin. There will be some drop-off points for different types of light globes, but you have to look into that. Broken glass as well, like your broken wine glasses or vases, things like that, they have to go into the red bin. They're made out of something different to glass bottles and jars that you could put into your yellow recycling bin. If you break your plates and your crockery, they go in there as well. Alrighty. Now, we do try not to put the garden organics into your red bin because if you have a green bin, because that's a way of diverting from landfill. We want to mulch and compost those garden organics. Now, you can't necessarily put, I know some councils you would have seen have FOGO, food and organic. So it's food organics, garden organics, that's what FOGO stands for. And they have bins where you can put your food scraps in there. If it's just a green organics bin, like it is in Bayside at the moment, it's just garden organics because there's a different composting system. Okay, there are different types of composting systems. So a lot of Bayside, and look, a lot of council areas, after the amalgamation of council areas, the old council areas still had their waste services in contracts for 10 or 20 years. So you might find parts of Bayside are different to other parts of Bayside. But for those who are under the Veolia contract, the waste goes to, first it goes out near well, I've forgotten the name now, but it's a place in Sydney. It's called a transfer station. It's sorted out a little bit, and then it gets taken out to Woodlawn, which is down near Goulburn. Okay, Topical is down near Goulburn. I'll give you, sorry. I'll give you a second to look at that. It's pretty interesting, I think. So when a landfill is all full, they do cover it up, and they will turn it into, you know, if it's suitable, it can be a park, it can be housing even. Sydney Park, if you ever come into Sydney, you know, now that we're allowed to again, that was a landfill site. It was Clayworks and landfill site. Now it's a park, and it has a pretty great stormwater filtration system as well. Now, contamination is when you put the wrong things, like in this picture, into the wrong bins. So incorrect items, especially into the yellow recycling bin and the green bin. And if we contaminate our recycling too much, it becomes unusable. And this is part of the reason that we had trouble with the recycling with China, because the recycling we were sending over was such poor quality recycling. So it's really important that we only put the right things in the yellow bin, the recycling bin, and the green bin. Because if you put like a pooey nappy in your yellow bin, it gets all over some cardboard, things like that. They don't clean it, they can't clean it. It gets sent to landfill. It's a huge waste of resources. All right, so in our recycling bin, I'm sure I have another lovely slide to explain this, but usually, as I teach kids, we have 5 groups of things, and you can use your hand to remember. We have paper and cardboard. Cardboard rather is just really thick paper. Cartons, so like those milk cartons, now they might have the alfoil on the inside if they're a long life carton, and they have that layer of plastic as well. Cans, so your aluminium and your steel cans, so tuna cans, fizzy drink cans, those sorts of things. If you have clean alfoil, you can keep it. I have like a little shelf where I keep all the clean alfoil, like from Easter, and you keep it until you have enough to scrunch up into a ball about the size of your fist, and then you can recycle that. And that is because it's not heavy enough as a sheet. It would be sorted out with paper, but as a fist, it's heavy enough to be picked up at the recycling centre by what we call eddies, which are electric current magnets. All right, I think I'm needing to go a little bit faster. Glass, just glass jars and bottles, they can go in, and our plastics. Now it's hard plastic, so hard plastic bottles, peanut butter containers, those sorts of things. They should all be as empty as possible. If we're not in a massive drought as well, giving them a little rinse really helps too. All righty. Now, as I was sort of covering there, our recycling at home system is made for containers, for food containers mostly, drink containers, household containers, cleaning containers as well, like your empty laundry bottles, they can go in there. With the glass jars and bottles, as I said before, it's not made for broken like glassware, not that that's glass. It's made for jars and bottles. Different kind of glass melts at different temperatures. That's why they have to be sorted out differently. All right, this is not going to play. Is it? Yeah. Now, this is not Bayside, obviously, but just to let you know that all your recycling ending up, so these 5 groups, paper and cardboard, cartons, plastics, glass and cans, they all get dumped out together, and they go through a series of machines to be sorted out into different types. These types then get, or categories, whatever you want to call them, they then get baled up, just like a hay bale or a wool bale. They get squashed together. or they get put in containers to be taken elsewhere. Now, this is another area where if we haven't put the right things in, a lot of contamination can occur, and things do need to go to landfill, unfortunately, when they're contaminated. All right, I'm not going to play this whole thing. You can Google all of these sorts of things just to let you know. All of these items go through the MRF, the Materials Recovery Facility, and they get sorted out on these conveyor belts going around and around in different ways until we have products that we can send off for recycling. So the actual recycling generally happens overseas. It doesn't always happen in Australia. Unfortunately, we don't have a huge industry for that. All right. Hopefully we do some at some stage. So green bin, stuff from the garden, or if you have flowers inside, you can put that in there as well. Not for big logs or anything like that. Little twigs, mulch, weeds, grass clippings, leaves. As I said before, these get taken away for mulching, composting. Sometimes this stuff is used to fill in old mine sites. If it's really high quality stuff in some areas, I don't think this happens in Bayside, but I know in Goulburn, for example, they can sell compost back to residents at a really reduced price if it's really high quality stuff. All right, so there we go, organic fertilizer. Now, huge way of saving organic matter from landfill. I love the green bin. All right, so these other things like your batteries, like I said, that can't go in any bins, mobile phones, electronics, there's alternative recycling management, alternative waste management services. And this is what we call at-source separation. So return and earn is great. If not only you get your money back, but you also are separating those materials at source. So there's much less chance of contamination. Mobile Muster with the phones, I'm sure you've all heard of that. TerraCycle are a great organisation. They recycle so many weird, tricky little things that we can't do at home. You do have to pay for some of these services. Some of them are free, like Mobile Muster, for example, and return and earn, you get money from that. All right, so I am done with my bit.